Hey guys, this is Ricky Rod, and I'm going to do a video about some change. I made some major changes in the studio this week, and I want to talk about it. And before I get started, I want to shout out my bro Josh Fredette, who is allowing me to master his track, actually his EP, and it's fantastic. It is so good, and that's what we're listening to right now. And again, I started mastering this project this week, and it sounds great. So, all right, so let's get started. Let's start. I wanted to begin and explain what spurred on this change, and it's a major change. It's a big deal. It's a for an audio engineer or producer, any major change is a big deal. And let me explain to you how I got to where I'm at right now. So, 5-6 years ago, I bought a 2012 late 12-core Mac Pro. It was the most powerful Mac you can own at the time. And I had a Pro Tools HD native system, and that has been my workhorse computer for however many years. And it's been fantastic. It's been a very, very good computer. It's been a very stable system. It's an expandable system. One of my favorite Mac computers ever made. And I've been on Apple computers for well over 20 years and in the studio since 2003. So last year, I decided I wanted to look at upgrading systems. One of the reasons I wanted to upgrade, number one, is that since we're on the subscription plan now with Pro Tools HD, I feel like I'm wasting my money if I'm not upgrading, not getting the latest updates of Pro Tools. Typically, if you find a stable system, for example, I have friends of mine that still run like Pro Tools 7, which happened to be one of my favorite versions of Pro Tools, by the way. There's just, there's some engineers that don't change anything. Like once it's working, that's it. It's good. You're frozen in time. But my workflow has changed over the years, and I want things to be a little bit more cutting edge. So long story short, I was like, you know what? My Mac Pro, my 12-core Mac Pro, it's the cheese grater, does not handle Thunderbolt, and I can't add Thunderbolt to it. So what do I do? How can I upgrade all this good stuff? So I started pricing out a Mac Pro, a 2013, basically a trash can. Okay, it wasn't a lateral move. It was going to be I wanted a 12-core with a similar hard drive RAM that I had. Now there are some upgrades on those trash can Mac Pros. It's got newer RAM, obviously the SSD drives, all that good stuff, and the Thunderbolt. But processing wise and benchmark wise, there's no difference between my 12-core cheese grater and the 12-core trash can. Okay, not really at all, actually, as far as benchmarks. So it wasn't going to be a step up in that way. However, I was thinking, okay, this is cool. I'll just go with it and just see what happens. By the time I got done pricing out that 12-core trash can to the specs that I wanted, I had to add Thunderbolt drives. I had to switch to Thunderbolt drives. I also had to add my HD native card had to switch to a Thunderbolt system. So basically, it ended up around $10,000 for this upgrade. Now, I am not made of money. I am not some major dude that's got all this extra cash to spend. That's a lot of money for a dude that's on his own, that's doing this for a living, and I'm not a fan of debt. I'm not going to go into debt for this system. I didn't think that would be a smart business decision. And it really upset me, to be honest. Apple has talked about the Mac Pro line and how they're updating it. We haven't really seen anything from it. And then they released the iMac Pro, and that's great. If you're a video guy, that's awesome. If you do photography, that's awesome. But there is nothing expandable about the iMac Pro. And again, it's an expensive system. Even with all the extra stuff, the Thunderbolt stuff I would have to add, that number is still almost at $10,000, even with an iMac Pro. So I started looking at other avenues. I looked at Hackintosh computers. I've been on the forums reading about them, all this good stuff. And man, I found a great dude. His name is Steve. He's at a company called Pro Tools PC. Now, I found his website, and what I did was just send him an email, explain to him my situation. Hey, I've been an Apple guy for 20 years. I've got a really good Mac system, and he replied quickly. And then we started talking about system specs and, excuse me, and the power that I needed. And I wanted the most powerful system I can afford. I wanted something that was just going to crush whatever I needed. So long story short, we ended up piecing a very good system together. And now, before I finish this story, you already know what direction I'm going with this. So go ahead and get your soda, get your drinks, and get mad, because that's what's going to happen. I'm going to piss somebody off. But it is what it is, okay? We live in a culture, we choose sides. It's Apple versus Android. It's the Apple logo or the Android logo. It's PC, it's Mac. It's Pepsi, it's Coke. It's the Dolphins or the Patriots. By the way, I'm a Dolphins fan. So, that's just the way we are. And people get so adamant about that, and I understand it. You know what? I'm an Apple guy. I've got 8 million Apple products in my home. I'm a huge fan of that company. But however, as an audio professional, they've hurt me. They've hurt me basically, and not personally or anything, but they've really dropped the ball when it comes to audio professionals in general. Now, if you're into videography and video editing and photo editing, that's really the way to go. That's cool. But for audio guys, I don't need the fancy 5K, 4K, 8K screens. I don't need any of that. I need processing power. I need a way to expand an expandable system. That's the kind of stuff I'm looking for. Now, my 12-core Mac Pro cheese grater provided that for me. But when they changed the design to the trash can, all that expandability and upgradability went out the window. And then the costs are astronomical, just very high, astronomical. So back to Steve, back to Pro Tools PC. So I had a lot of concerns. I really did. I wanted a stable system. I wanted to make sure that these were really good systems. My workflow is pretty different. My stuff's always set up. I can have a band track in my studio, or I'm building a song for a client. I have to be flexible. I have to be able to do many different genres of music, and I do it all. I love it. But on my mix sessions, I'm editing, I'm mixing, and mastering on the same session. I need juice. I need as much processing power as possible. So Steve put that together for me, and Steve is super knowledgeable about Pro Tools systems with Windows PCs. I did my research on him, and I did my research on his company, and there's not a huge there's not a lot of people that are in Windows in the recording world, and the reason is that not Avid, but DigiDesign at the time, a company that invented Pro Tools. It was easier for a company to go grab a Mac from the store, right, and say, hey, I'm going to build my software for this computer. And that's what they did. Now, when you look at the Pro line, not even the Pro line, but the line of Apple computers compared to Dell or HP, there's not that many product lines with Apple computers. So they're all relatively they're really easy to design software for, and that's why Apple always had the audio world, because Pro Tools only worked on Apple products for a long time, and they were great. They're great. I love it. Haven't had a problem until this past year with Apple. So Now we fast forward a couple of years ago, I think, to Pro Tools 10, where Avid announced, hey, we're going to have Windows support. And things started to change. And I was looking at that. But over the years, software companies they've been trying to make their products, for example, Adobe is a good example, that Adobe's products are platform agnostic. In other words, they will work on a Windows machine or they will work on an Apple computer. Pick your poison, pick your OS you like, pick whatever computer you want, download your stuff, pay your subscription. You're cooking with gas. You're going. Well, that's the way, that's what's happened with Avid Pro Tools. The same thing. We have software now that not only works in the Apple world, but it works in the PC world. Now, what versions of PC computers work is very different than in the Apple world. And what Avid's decided to do is, hey, these are the motherboards that work, and then PC guys can either build a system or you can go find a system. My advice is, hey, try to find somebody that knows what they're doing that can build you a system. So this gets me to Steve. Steve knows what he's doing, and he sent me a turnkey system. When I got the system, I unpacked it, put in my HT Native card, connected all my stuff. I launched my first session, and it was perfect. Of course, I think I had 70 plus installers of plugins I had to install. But long story short, it was a seamless transition for me to switch from my Mac Pro to this custom PC. All my sessions work great. My mix sessions work great. My mastering sessions worked great. Everything. My ins and outs, all that stuff. It has been the easiest transition. I have literally been waiting for the sky to fall. And it hasn't happened yet. So overall, I can tell you, I've been very happy with this transition and this change. That's the change. I switched from my Mac Pro to a custom PC. This custom PC is extremely powerful. It benchmarks much faster than the current 12 core and the current iMac Pro. It's just a faster computer. And I was able to get multiple hard drives into my system for my recording drives. It's got Thunderbolt 3. I'm not locked in anymore. I can expand. I don't have to worry about what Apple's going to do in the future with their Pro line anymore. And is this a big deal? Yes, it is a big deal. But at the end of the day, I walk into my studio, I turn on my gear, I turn on my computer, I launch Pro Tools, and I'm working. The only difference is literally the way my computer works. But my software hasn't changed, the way I edit hasn't changed, and my audio hasn't changed. The only difference is the OS. Now, granted, Steve has been very instrumental in helping me with the transition into the Windows world. I had a lot of questions, stability questions, just everything you can think of. I have a lot. I was very detailed with him, and let me tell you, he was very detailed back. And it's been a fantastic experience for me. So yeah, my workhorse computer in the studio now is a custom PC. And it's extremely, extremely powerful. I'll just give you some not benchmark numbers, but I'll give you some numbers here. I pulled up a mix session yesterday. Normally on my Mac Pro, I would have been hovering around 50 to 60% processor usage. That same mix session, master session, remember I do them all together, on my PC, peaked at like 16%, but really stayed around like 10 or 12%. And I was not expecting that big of a difference, but it was a significant difference. And, if I wanted to record at 64 buffer with 4 or 5 plugins on, I can. The latency is great. And it's an extremely powerful machine. So, all this to say, because you're probably mad now, Ricky has switched to Apple. The world has ended. Oh my God. No, the world hasn't ended. I still have an Apple computer in my studio. In fact, I'm editing this video on an Apple Mac Pro right now. But I had to make a change. I was tired of waiting for Apple, and I felt strongly that if I waited too long, I was going to get behind. And maybe that's just me. I don't like to be behind. I like to be forward thinking. I like to have the latest and greatest software. I at no point in this process was I double guessing myself. My only concern was me. Like, I didn't want to F up Windows. And but you know what? This transition has been great. Again, it was seamless. All the same plugins, all the same software, all the same stuff, man. But now I'm just on a much faster system that's expandable, that's upgradable, and significantly cheaper than the other option that I was looking at, which was basically between $7,500 to $10,000. So that is it. I am on a custom PC in my studio, and that's it. It's this season. Haven't given up on Apple. I'll always have Apple products in my house, but for now, the workhorse stuff that I need needs to be done on this system. So if you have any questions, let me know. Comment. I want to know your thoughts on this. I'm not the only guy in this boat, you know, and if you happen to be at that point where you're like me, where I had to make an upgrade, but the cost and, you know, it's complicated, you know, to switch out a system. You know, if you feel overwhelmed and you're worried about switching to the Windows world, my advice would be to contact Pro Tools PC. You can message me and find somebody that knows what they're doing that can walk you through it. And that's what happened to me. I've had a fantastic experience. It's been great. I'm very happy with the decision that I made, and I was thankful that I was able to do it. But for the future of the studio, I needed something that wasn't going to lock me in anymore. So that's it. I'm in PC. And you can throw your drink now. You can go crazy. God bless. Bye.